Hello again. Welcome to Because Jesus Said So. Again, my name is Lowell Smith. I've been teaching the Word for more than 40 years. And today I have a lesson on the Abomination of Desolation spoken of by Jesus and the prophet Daniel. And this is a follow-up to my previous video entitled Abomination of Desolation Explained. And the reason I broke it into two separate videos is because it would have been too long and too detailed to try to bring them together in one lesson. So this is a follow-up to that. And what it's going to explain, and the title I've given it is the Technology Explosion and the New World Order, and as they relate to the Abomination of Desolation. And just as a little bit of review, we'll look at what Lucifer stated as his will in Isaiah chapter 14 and verse 13. And I've broken it out into bullets here. This is exactly as it's written in the scripture verse, but the presentation is in bullet form. And Lucifer has made a vow in this verse, and he said, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation. And this is a declaration. This is not a wish list. It's not a desire. It's a declaration of what he will do. And this was confirmed by Jesus when he said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, then you'll know that this is what's happening. And so this was foretold by Jesus to his disciples that it was actually going to happen. Now let's look at Lucifer, who he is and his capabilities, and we'll go to Ezekiel chapter 28 and look at verses 14 and 15. And we need to understand that Lucifer is a created being, just like you and I are created, okay? He's a created being. He is not a god. He does not have God powers. He is a created being. He's a heavenly being. And he was given some wonderful attributes when God did create him, but then he fell. Okay, let's look at what these two verses say. And it's talking about Lucifer. It says, Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created. And that's the important part. He was created till iniquity was found in you. So it was Satan's or Lucifer's choice to rebel against God. Some people ask the question, why did God create the devil? Well, he didn't create the devil. He created Lucifer, the anointed cherub, and then he fell. He came against God, and he became the devil as a result of his own choice. Now, having stated that Lucifer was created and not a god, we look down at the bottom of this slide here. Lucifer needs and will use technology to sit as God in the temple. Okay, and that's what I'm going to show you today. The content of this lesson is really that technology explosion and the world organizations that are existing today that did not exist 30 years ago. Okay. All right, so let's answer the question, how does this Satan-possessed Antichrist sit as God? Now, in my previous lesson, I showed that Satan will enter into the Antichrist when the Antichrist is killed, and he will then, as he enters into him, bring him back to life. And of course, this is his version of the resurrection of Jesus. Okay, and but it's Lucifer who is going to accomplish his will by possessing the body of the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is not the one technically that's going to declare himself to be God. It's going to be Lucifer, just as he declared in that first slide that I showed you, using the body of the Antichrist as his vessel to go into the temple. So we need to ask the question, how can he be as God? Because to be as God, he would have to be omnipresent, everywhere all the time. That's what God is. He would have to be omnipotent, having all power, okay? And I put in here, he's going to control buying and selling. That's one of the methods that he's going to invoke to be omnipotent. And finally, omniscient. How is he going to be omniscient like God and possess all knowledge? And let's look at the development of the world organizations, and in conjunction with the newest technology that exists today. All right, and let me again point out that I put at the bottom of several of these slides my email address, because I really would like to hear your comments, questions, and challenges to any of these video lessons that I've been bringing you. And my email for this is becausejesussaidso@gmail.com. All right. In conjunction with the modern technology, we're going to have the people becoming globally as one. And I've labeled this slide the return to Babel. You remember the Tower of Babel? Everybody was of one language and one mind, and they were going to build this great tower so that they could exalt themselves into the presence of God. Well, today the world organization that's primarily leading that movement is called the World Economic Forum. Okay, and this was an organization started by a man named Charles Schwab back in the 1970s. And he's an elderly man now. He's well into his 80s. And recently I heard that he's going to be giving up the leadership of the World Economic Forum to another individual. We don't need to get into all of that. The purpose and reason for existence of the World Economic Forum is to introduce a new world order, a global society, a global civilization, a global country. No more nationalism. You know, no United States, no England, no Germany, no South Africa, but rather the way it's being presented, there'll be like 10 regions, and these relate to the 10 kings in Revelation, but they would all be answering to one authority, and that would be this World Economic Forum, this new world order. Now, the United Nations also plays a role in this, but to a lesser degree, okay? And they are actually participating with the World Economic Forum in trying to introduce and bring into the existence this new world order. Now, what does the new world order mean? What does it exist of? It's a one world economy. Okay, right now you have, English currency, and you have German currency, and you have French currency, and you have U.S. currency, and you have Japanese currency and stuff like that. Well, they're going to blend those all into one, and I've got it listed at the bottom here. But the economy is going to basically involve commerce and manufacturing and trade without borders. Secondly, a one world government. Again, there will be no President of the United States or Prime Minister of Britain or President of France or so on and so forth. That government is going to be a single government that administers policies globally. Then they want to introduce a one world religion. They want to get rid of Christianity and Islam and Catholicism and Buddhism and all that kind of stuff, and dictate basically a religion. And in the beginning, that religion is going to be toward the Antichrist. Okay, he's going to cause people to worship him, and we're going to cover that in a few minutes here. And then finally, that one world currency, so that they can control who can buy and sell and what they can buy and sell. They're going to have control over your ability to buy and sell. Now, the technology that is going to allow the Antichrist to do the things that he claimed to do in Revelation chapter 13 include GPS, which has been around since the late 80s, quantum computing, which has only come into prominence in the last 7 or 8 years, blockchain technology, which is a financial computerized mechanism that helps using and controlling digital currency. And then I've added in here subcutaneous chips. Subcutaneous chips would be a receiver mechanism embedded under the skin, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, that would do the same things that your smartphone does relative to communication and location through GPS and so on and so forth. And then the final one I put in here is a kind of a technology that applies to all of these things that I just mentioned, but is the brains behind the use of all of these kind of things, and that's labeled right now artificial intelligence, or AI. And artificial intelligence is rapidly being developed by a number of different companies and countries, and there's a race to try to be the leader in artificial intelligence. And as a result of that race to be the leader, the technology is kind of getting out of hand, okay? People are losing control because they're more worried about advancement than they are about security and safety in it. Now, the other thing I put at the bottom of this slide is that all these things listed on this slide regarding the New World Order, regarding the technology, they are already here. They are already in place. Now, we don't have the one world government yet or the one world currency, but we do have it in some places and in some forms, okay? And it's rapidly expanding. So, the technology explosion and the New World Order are the tools that are going to enable the Antichrist to occupy the temple and declare himself to be God. But not only declare himself, but actually exhibit the attributes of God before the people. And that's going to cause them to worship him and to follow him. Now, inasmuch as I'm going to be talking about some pretty advanced technology, I probably feel responsible to tell you why I believe that I can bring this technology explanation to you. And in this slide here, I show that I was the program manager for nuclear submarine advanced technology from 1981 to 1998 at the country's world shipyard and the world's largest naval building shipyard, Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company in Newport News, Virginia. And I've included a little photograph here of one of my project teams with an arrow pointing to me when I was about 40. So that was a long time ago. But this is pretty typical of the extent of the technology development teams that I actually managed, okay? I was managing DARPA projects. I was speaking at colleges and universities to their engineering and science departments. I was invited to speak to them. I spoke at a lot of military meetings, including a room full of admirals, and I rubbed elbows and ate dinner with the Secretary of the Navy and other officials. Traveled around the world and researching the development of technology as I could apply it to nuclear submarines that we were building at Newport News Shipbuilding. So I got involved in pretty much all of the sciences, all of the technologies, and and therefore I believe I can bring these to you at a layman's level explanation, but yet explain the sophistication of that technology. Now, inasmuch as we're in 2025 and we have these new technologies and these new governmental entities like the World Economic Forum and so on and so forth, I want to give you a little background, a little history. This is a paper that I did, and it's dated May 22nd, 1993. And the title of it is About Antichrist. Okay, so this was some 42 years ago, is that right? 7 and 25, 32 years ago. Okay, about 32 years ago, I did a study in Revelation, pretty extensive. And the thing I want to point out is that in May 22nd, 1993, I did this study in a library with a yellow pad and pencils and books and magazines that were available in the library, okay, and my Bible. There was no internet to speak of. Yes, the internet was just brand new on the scene, but it didn't have any of the plethora of information that is available today. So it wasn't a useful tool to use to do this study. So I spent a lot of time in encyclopedias and reference books and magazines and technical journals and the Word of God and some other books written by other men regarding the book of Revelation and the Antichrist, the end times, okay? And it was a very extensive study, and I came to a lot of conclusions. But here's the main conclusion, okay? Well, here, I'll even show you this slide. This is the cover page of the study, and it's not necessary that you have to be able to read that. But, for example, on the number of the man given in Revelation, the Antichrist is 666. And I did a little research here, and I came up with this list of popes that existed in the history of the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. And interestingly enough, there was Pope Sixtus the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th already serving their terms as popes, okay? And so I thought to myself, that's interesting, 666, how about Pope Sixtus the 6th? That would be the next pope. And I've got dates in there of 1990 question mark to question mark, you know. So I was saying to myself in May 22nd of 1993 that the next pope that takes the name of Pope Sixtus will be the 6th one. And that could be a good fit for 666. But the conclusion was that I came to the conclusion and belief that the Antichrist would be a pope, okay, from the Catholic Church. Now, looking at this slide, there were other reasons that I concluded that the Catholic Church was mentioned in the book of Revelation. This one talks about Jezebel, the whore, the mother of harlots, and those are words used in the book of Revelation. And she's dressed in scarlet and purple, which were the the coverings and robes of the bishops and cardinals and priests and so forth. There were 7 heads, and the angel told John the Revelator that those 7 heads are 7 hills. He said that specifically. And we knew at the time that Rome was known as the city that's set on 7 hills. So I concluded that. And then the other thing it said was many waters, peoples, nations, and tongues. Well, at that time, the Catholic Church was established on all 7 continents. Okay? Every culture, every nation, pretty much, throughout the world And so they had an allegiance of many waters being the geographical locations around the world, and of many people, nations, and tongues. So there was a great following and allegiance of the Catholic Church. And looking at this next slide, um, entitled the Catholic Church, in 1993, they were the wealthiest organization on the planet. Now, at the time, I remember they were valued at about $800 to $900 billion. But nobody knew for sure because they were a tax-exempt organization and they were not transparent or forthcoming on all of their holdings. But it was estimated to be between 800 and 900 billion dollars. That's a lot of money, especially in 1993. Well, today, BlackRock is valued at somewhere around 115 trillion. Okay, that's 15 times more wealth than the Catholic Church had in 1993. Now, I know the Catholic Church has increased its wealth since then. In 2025, it was about 1.3 billion. I'm sorry, that's the membership. But anyway, they were on all 7 continents, and they were the most organized. They had an organization that was well disciplined and willing to fulfill their roles in the church without question, and their allegiance was to the church. So it was a very disciplined organization. And then at the time, they were the largest membership of any single organization on earth at 1.3 billion. Now today we know that there's about 8 billion people on the planet, and about a third of them are Christians, a third of them are Muslims, and a third of them are other. Okay, so the big two are the Christians and the Muslims, and that would mean about 2.5 to 2.7 billion membership for each of those two organizations, let's call it. Now, one of the things that happened in 1993, coming to all those conclusions about the Catholic Church, is looking at this slide here, I came to some things that I couldn't explain that were written in Revelation chapter 13 on things that the Antichrist was going to in fact do once he came into power. Okay, and Revelation 13 verse 13 says, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire to come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men." I couldn't explain how he could do that. Okay, he's not a god. In verse 15, it says, "And he had the power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." All right, 2 things there. Number 1, no idea how he could give life to an image, which I can explain today, but I couldn't back then. And then also that anybody that didn't worship should be killed. Well, they were a prominent organization. They were the wealthiest and the most attended organization on the planet, but not to the extent that they could demand that people be killed, okay, for not following them. And then finally in verse 16 it says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark." Okay? Couldn't explain that. Couldn't figure out a way that he could make that happen. How could he cause all, people on the entire planet, including non-Catholics? I mean, certainly the Islams and the Buddhists and all the other religions weren't going to follow what the Pope said, and nor would they follow what the Antichrist said, because where would he get that power to do that? I mean, he doesn't have access to all the people on here. So that was a stumbling block. I came to the end of that. Okay. Now, looking at this next slide, the technology explosion from when I did that study in 1993 to today, okay, and towards the end of 2025. From a technology standpoint, handheld GPS was introduced in 1989, about 4 years before I did that study. And the two companies that provided handheld units that truck drivers, for example, could use were Magellan and Garmin. And I actually had a Garmin back then. And in 1993, there were about 5,000 of those units on Earth. Today, there's about 19 million of those units on Earth. And they're basically used by professionals, like I say, truck drivers, transportation companies, that kind of thing. Probably mining companies and explorations and so on and so forth. Now, the smartphone is the other item that offers GPS. And in 1993, there weren't any. Smartphone didn't come until about 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. But today, there are 7.3 billion smartphones in use on Earth. And if you look at the population demographics, of that 8 billion people that populate the Earth, about 0.7 billion or 8.8 billion are under the age of 10 years old. So they're likely not to have smartphones. So pretty much every adult, every young adult, every teenager, every young adult, and every adult has a smartphone, at least one. Internet users, in 1993, there were 15 million. I started out prior to that on AOL, America Online. And I remember getting a text message from Steve Case, who was the founder and president of AOL at the time, announcing that, wow, we had reached 100,000 members in AOL. Okay, 100,000. Well, in 1993, there were 15 million people using the internet. Today, 5.6 billion people using the internet. And obviously that's not counting the smartphone users. That's just computers and tablets and that kind of thing. Computer power, okay, and data transfer. We go back to 1993, they had the 16-bit binary, ones and zeros. And they had, under that, data transfer backbones. They were actual cables, telephone lines, some of them dedicated, that carried the data from one place to the other, just like a telephone signal, a landline. And their capacity of computations was less than 1 gigaflop. Now, a gigaflop is a million transactions or computations per second. Okay, and this was less than that. Now, we look at today, the computing power has gone from 16-bit binary to qubits. And I'm going to explain qubits to you in a little bit here with superpositioning and quantum computing and that kind of thing. All right, we've gone from slow data transfer to the speed of light transfer. And we've gone from less than 1 gigaflop to more than 1 teraflop. And a teraflop is a trillion computations per second. Think about that. Okay, that's a lot. So there's been a real explosion in technology, and those advancements and those capabilities, those capacities are what's going to enable the Antichrist, Lucifer, to fulfill his will, his promise to be omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. All right, finally, let's look at the New World Order from 1993 to 2025. As far as global authority went, the wealthiest organization in 1993 was the Catholic Church. Today it's BlackRock. There's also Vanguard and State Street, both of which are wealthier than the Catholic Church. So number 1, 2, and 3 organizations today are all wealthier than the Catholic Church today. The global currency, there wasn't any in 1993. Today we have the central bank digital currency, that's CBDC, and that's advancing in different parts of the world at different rates. Okay, but it's rapidly coming on the scene. Global government, there wasn't a global government in 1993. There was the United Nations, but they were they were a token organization. They didn't have any authority or power. Today, the global government is being introduced and fostered by the World Economic Forum, which the last I heard has about 2,000 members of the elite, the wealthiest men on the planet. The Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates, Larry Finks, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that government's coming down the pike. And then the global religion, again in 1993, the predominant global religion was the Catholic Church. And as of right now, there isn't one, okay, global religion. So, let's look at GPS on your smartphone. Okay, on this slide here, we show that there are 7.2 billion in use as of 2024, which is 88% of the Earth's population. 8.2 billion people on Earth as of January 1st of 2025. 1 billion under the age of 8 years old. Okay, so that explains why there isn't 100% usage of smartphones across the globe. Now, one of the things I do in the room, okay, if I'm in a sanctuary or a classroom or something like that, is I will have the attendees take out their smartphone and hold it up, okay? And for example, in the sanctuary, I got people sitting 3 feet apart, side to side, and maybe 3 to 4 feet apart, front to back. So it's a pretty dense seating arrangement. So the cell phones are close together, okay? And what I'll do is I'll have them type in an address, preferably out of state, if not at least out of the city, and have them all do it at the same time, okay? And so they'll type in an address and they get back a little map like the one shown here in this image within 2 seconds at the most. And you notice on this map here, it shows more than one route from where the smartphone exists now to where they typed in the address and they want to go. Not only does it show the different routes, it lists the driving times, okay, from one place to the other. This is all done in a couple of seconds. All right, now this is done at the speed of light. So what I'll do is I'll have the I'm going to take this down a second and show you. I'm going to have the people tap their back of their hand with one finger as fast as they can 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay? And in the time they can do that, tap it 7 times, a photon, which is light, will move around the outside of the Earth, the perimeter of the Earth, 15 times. Okay, that's the speed of light. So in that 7 quick taps, light circumvents the Earth 15 times. Okay, so let's look at this slide here, which is the GPS constellation. Okay, this is what your cell phone, your smartphone uses to get that little map and the data that it displays. Now, that map and that data are not, all the data that goes into that are not stored on your phone. They're stored in, that data is stored in servers on the surface of the Earth at different locations around the planet. Okay, Google has some, Microsoft has some, and so forth. Okay. Now, what happens is when you use your smartphone to access GPS, it sends a signal from your phone to a group of satellites orbiting the Earth at 11,000 miles above the Earth. This is called the GPS constellation. There are 32 satellites orbiting simultaneously. And this animated graphic shows how quickly that up to 7 satellites can pick up that signal and transfer it back to one of those servers at Google or Microsoft or whatever, and then gather that data back to the satellite constellation, back down to your GPS cell phone in less than 2 seconds from the time you type in that address. Okay? That's quick. And it's global. It's everywhere. All right, what about people that don't have smartphones? Okay, another technology that is on the scene right now, and there's over 1 million of these in use in Sweden. There's, I think, close to 1 million in use in Australia. And there are other countries, India, I believe, is one of them, that has a substantial number of these in use. It's called a subcutaneous chip, and the only the word subcutaneous means it's under the skin. It's embedded under the skin. That's subcutaneous. Okay, and this shows it here in relation to a grain of rice. So it's very small, and this can be embedded under your skin in your hand or your forehead if you prefer, and it offers the same communication technology that your smartphone offers, minus the telephone aspect of it. Okay, so it can receive and transfer data from your hand or forehead to one of these GPS satellites, to a server on the Earth, and back in the same amount of time that your GPS cell phone does, your smartphone. Okay, so for people who don't have a smartphone or refuse to carry one, then they can be caused to take one of these subcutaneous chips, and if they don't, they won't be able to buy or sell anything, because the data on this is going to be required to make a transaction. Okay, so you go to the store, you go to the gas station, and you want to purchase some commodity and pay for it. You can't unless you have this technology, either in your smartphone or in this chip. Okay, so that's the mechanism that the Antichrist is going to use to control what you can buy or sell. So, how does the Satan-possessed Antichrist sit as God? Using GPS and these two types of receivers, he will be everywhere all the time. He's going to have a presence in your smartphone or in your subcutaneous chips 100% of the time. Well, that's a lot of contact and information for a man, a created being. Yeah, but we're going to see that he's going to use and take advantage of artificial intelligence as the mechanism to know, okay, to give him the knowledge of who's doing what and what's going on and where simultaneously. And that's going to be a function of quantum computing. Okay, quantum computing is the latest computing technology to come about, and quantum is nothing more than the plural of quanta. Quanta is a particle. Okay, a photon is a particle. It's a quanta. An electron is a particle. It's a quanta. Okay, so don't get afraid of the word quantum. Quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is a bizarre process, a bizarre function that exists. Back before he died in the 1950s, Albert Einstein was asked about quantum entanglement, and his response, his description of quantum entanglement was this: spooky stuff. Spooky stuff. So for Albert Einstein to say spooky stuff, it had to be pretty spooky. Okay, it didn't align with all of the quantum physics and science laws that were understood at that time. Okay, so let's read this. Quantum entanglement enables particles, that's what a quanta is, a particle, to affect another particle, each other, instantaneously across any distance. Not at the speed of light, instantaneously. So, like if you were to roll a blue marble over here and you had a red marble over here and they were connected with a wooden rod, when you turned one of them, the other one has to turn instantaneously. They're connected. That's what quantum entanglement is. And looking at the bottom of the slide here, it says entangled particles would remain connected even if they were on opposite sides of the universe. That's why Einstein called it spooky stuff. Now, scientists can't really explain it, but they understand it. Okay, they know how to use it. They know it exists and they know how to use it, but they can't tell you how that can, how two particles can be connected on opposite sides of the universe. Well, here's another amazing attribute of quantum computing. Okay, with entanglement. Two particles connected at any distance have no independent existence. They're as one. And what it shows here is that when the old bit technology was used in computers, it was zeros and ones working to make a number. Okay, so if it was 8-bit, it would be 0001, 0001. That would be an 8-bit computer number. And that 0 or that 1 in that 8-bit computer was either a 0 or a 1. It could not be changed. And so that limited the number of processes and the number of numbers that can be manipulated at one time. Now in quantum computing, we have this entanglement thing where two particles can be a 1 and a 0 simultaneously until they're measured. Okay, I'm not even going to go there, okay, because this is really where you get into particle physics and quantum mechanics. But that's a fact, that's a known fact, okay? So as a result of them being a 1 and a 0 at the same time, they are enabled or capable of making thousands more calculations per second per bit than the old single bit system. Okay, and the hardware technology that these are present in are called qubits. Okay, and so in quantum computing, the processing speed is virtually infinitely faster than the old supercomputers of 10 years ago. Who was the guy on Jeopardy? I don't even remember his name, the computer on Jeopardy that IBM brought. Was super fast. It was a supercomputer. But compared to a quantum computer using qubits and superposition, he was a kindergartner, okay, a first grader, compared to a college graduate. And this just shows here that both values exist simultaneously. The red is one, the blue is another. Let's say red is 1, blue is 0. And then as soon as you measure them, they freeze, okay, and they become one or the other. All right, but the bottom line as far as quantum computing goes is that it's infinitely faster. Now, the computers that are being built and used today for quantum computing have to be kept at cryogenic temperatures, minus 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So they have to be cooled and maintained cooled continuously. And they're very, very sensitive to external vibration. Okay, so they have to be anchored on bedrock and other substantial structures to keep them from feeling any external vibrations, because an external vibration can corrupt the process. Now, the latest we've heard here is that one of these data centers using quantum computers uses so much energy for cooling and computing that each data center basically requires its own power plant. Okay, imagine that. They can't just tap into the grid because they wouldn't have enough power to do what they needed to do. So they're building a dedicated power plant for each data center. So then, how does Satan-possessed Antichrist sit as God using quantum computing and artificial intelligence? With those two together, now the artificial intelligence is nothing more than data, but it's data that can be manipulated, stored, and retrieved at such high speeds that there's no delay. Okay, it's basically real time, it's instantaneous. So this knowledge is available to the Antichrist in real time. So if you go to the grocery store with your subcutaneous chip or your your smartphone, and you want to buy a loaf of bread, that transaction is known to the Antichrist as it happens, and it can be stopped. All right. Let's say you want to buy a ribeye. Sorry, sir, but your quantity limit for ribeyes would be exceeded, so you can't buy that. You're gonna have to buy a T-bone. Okay, they can do that, or you go without. And then, if for some reason you want to resist or rebel the policies of the Antichrist, they can shut you off completely. You no longer have a bank account, it's gone. You no longer have the ability to buy or sell. They have that kind of control. So what this does, the quantum computing in conjunction with artificial intelligence, is it makes the Antichrist omniscient. He's got all knowledge all the time, everywhere, with everybody. Again, my email address in the bottom of the slide, because Jesus said so, inbox at gmail.com. All right, next slide. How does Satan-possessed Antichrist sit as God? Using central bank digital currency and blockchain technology. Again, using quantum computers, instantaneous or speed of light data transfer, and having a central currency. Blockchain technology makes every transaction visible to everybody always, okay, at the same time. So there's no data transfer delay, there's no processing delay. It's visible and transparent and apparent right now to everybody all the time. And as a result of that, he has instantaneous control over any transaction. And that gives him omnipotence, okay, all power over buying and selling. So it's technology that enables this created being, Lucifer, who possesses or enters into the Antichrist, to sit as God in the temple. And as a result, he will be omnipresent. He will be omnipotent. He will be omniscient. And those are attributes of God. He can sit up there now and declare himself to be as God, which is what he said in his declaration of will. And he does that using technology, as I've listed here. Okay? So, the Antichrist is going to come on the scene at the beginning of the time of Jacob's trouble, the 7-year tribulation period spoken of by the prophet Daniel. great tribulation period and so forth, which we're about to enter. Okay, now all of the watchers out there, and there's hundreds of them, do not know the day or the hour. Jesus said that. No man knows the day or the hour when the rapture is going to take place. Most people believe and teach that the rapture will happen prior to the revealing of the Antichrist and the start of the 7-year tribulation period. And as a result, the church will be taken out of the way. But let's save that for last, okay? So, say before the end of this year, any day now, the church is taken off the planet and the Antichrist is revealed and he comes into power. Now, he's going to come in as a man with great wisdom for the people, and he's going to present himself as somebody to be desired. Okay, so the whole people on earth are going to desire him and to be behind him and for him. And so as a result of that, he gets in power, and once he gets in power, he starts to invoke all of these controls, okay, that we just spoke about: his omniscience, his omnipresence, his omnipotence. And if you are not saved and born again, you will enter into the tribulation period on earth. The church will be taken up to heaven. You're going to stay here, and you're going to enter that tribulation period. Now, the Bible says in Revelation that you have a choice. You either worship the beast and take his mark, or you will be killed. That's what it says. Okay? You will be killed. Worship the beast and take his mark. And if you do that, if you say, okay, I don't want to be killed, I'm going to worship him and I'm going to take his mark so that I can buy and sell, you have sentenced yourself to be lost forever. There's no turning back from that, the Bible says. Okay? And in Revelation 20:14, it says, "And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire." This is the second death. And that lake of fire is sulfur, according to the Bible. Okay, it's burning sulfur. And you will be tormented, not able to die, not able to get any relief. So that's not a good thing. And in verse 15 it says, "And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." So if you're not saved, if you're not born again, and you don't go up in the rapture, you will be lost forever and suffer eternal torment in the lake of fire. All right. Choice number 2. You refuse to worship the beast and not take his mark. Okay? You don't care if he can prevent you from buying and selling and control your life. You're just going to refuse it. As a result of that, you will be beheaded. That's the result of this choice, the second choice. And there will be many that are, okay? And these are called the tribulation saints, okay? And that's listed here in Revelation chapter 20, verse 4. It says, "And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither the image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years." These are the tribulation saints, okay? And I'm not going to get into talking about that resurrection and how it differs from the church in this particular lesson. I do cover it somewhat in my Bible lesson called "The Body, the Bride, the Church." Okay, if you want to look at that, the difference between the tribulation saints and the church. So, continuing with that, as far as the eternal torment goes, we look at Revelation chapter 14, verses 9 through 11. And it says, "And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in their forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Brimstone is sulfur. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been around sulfur or inhaled a little bit or anything like that. It's caustic. Okay. It'll cause your eyes to burn, your lungs to burn, your skin to burn. I mean, it'll just really feel bad. And that's forever. That's for eternity. And then 14:11, and the smoke of their torment. I believe that smoke is that acidity. Okay. They're being burned caustically, with this substance. And that causes this odor, the smoke, to rise up. But the smoke of that torment ascends up forever and ever. There's no end. And they have no rest day or night, who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receiveth the mark of his name. So, that's a destiny for those who are not saved. Okay? Let's look at the destiny for those who are saved. According to the Bible, and I'm not going to do an exhaustive study here of the pre-tribulation rapture, and I can, and I probably will someday. But there's many out there, okay? And I believe in the pre-tribulation rapture primarily for these 3 verses right here. If you're saved, you're going to be taken up off the earth before the Antichrist is revealed, before the time of Jacob's trouble begins, and you're not going to be subject to any of that nasty stuff. And here's what Romans 5:9 says, much more than being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. That tribulation period is God's wrath. We'll be saved from that, okay? John 14:3 says, and if I go and prepare a place for you, this is Jesus talking, words written in red. He says, if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Okay, and he's talking to his bride. And he's not going to throw his bride into subjugation to the Antichrist. Okay, he loves his body too much. Again, go back and look at my video, the body, the bride, the church, and you'll see why. 1 Thessalonians 4:17 says, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Now, in the end of the tribulation period, Jesus comes back on a white horse with his saints behind him, and he lands his feet in Jerusalem, okay, and makes contact with the ground, okay, and he establishes his millennial kingdom. He quickly defeats the armies of the earth, and he descends and stands on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, and becomes the King of Kings and Lord of Lords on earth, okay. He brings his kingdom down to earth. This verse says in 1 Thessalonians 4:17 that we're going to be caught up to meet him in the air. That's the rapture. He's going to come down. The voice of the archangel is going to speak. The sound of the trumpet is going to be heard. And Paul writes that the dead in Christ shall rise first, and we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So he's not going to set feet on the ground. He's going to come in the clouds and bring us up to where he is, as it said in John 14:3. So your eternal destiny can be saved from the lake of fire by confessing Jesus Christ. And John chapter 3 says you must be born again of the Spirit in order for that to happen. And again, I would invite you to look at my video, The Body, the Bride, the Church, okay? Explained in great detail with many, many scriptures. So the church is in heaven with Jesus before the tribulation starts. So anyway, with the New World Order and the explosion of technology that I just described for you, Lucifer will enter into the Antichrist, and in the middle of that 7-year period, at the 3.5-year mark, 1260 days, he's going to cause the abomination of desolation. That means he's going to cause the sacrifice and the offerings to cease. He's going to basically destroy the temple, and he's going to announce himself that he is God. And at that time, Jesus says, all heaven is going to break loose. Okay, the wrath of God is going to be unleashed on the inhabitants of the earth and all of the creation on the earth, the trees, the waters, the fishes, the people. It's all going to experience the wrath of God until he returns and defeats the armies of the earth at the end of that 7-year period. So I invite you to consider confessing Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And you must be born again, Jesus said, to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And that's the invitation. Okay. Otherwise, you're of the devil. And if you refuse Jesus, then you've accepted Satan. You've accepted Lucifer as your God. And his destiny is terrible. He ends up in the lake of fire just like everybody else who follows him, along with the Antichrist. Okay. So, again, if you have any comments, questions, or challenges, my email address is becausejesussaidsoinbox@gmail.com. I love you. I pray for you. And I thank you for watching these videos.